We're so back. I'm scrolling Twitter. I'm scrolling the timeline. I keep seeing all these posts saying Israel has confirmed their first recorded case of a human with Hantavirus. And to the, I guess, crowd on the internet that believes that Israel is like a society of people with like magic powers, then I don't know. Like, what are the like conspiracy implications of this?
That they are not immune to hantavirus.
Does this mean like Israel is going to like cure the virus tomorrow or something?
Bearish on Mossad now.
Yeah.
Bearish on the Israeli deep state.
Chat says, we going to get another pandemic before GTA 6? I hope not. Remember, a pandemic is not a vacation. This is a nothing burger alert. We have a nothing burger alert. Hantavirus will be a nothing burger.
Yeah.
It's going to be so hilarious if it actually does turn out to be a pandemic and we're just going to get clipped so hard right now. We have the trial. That's right. It is day 9 of the Musk v. Altman trial right across the river from us in beautiful Oakland, California. Oh, this is cool, actually. Goodfire just released posts on the geometry of how neural networks think. This is going to be a little too deep to get into on the stream, but Goodfire does a lot of great neural network interpretability research. We had Mira Murati, who was the former CTO of OpenAI. When Sam Altman was fired, she briefly became the interim CEO for like a day before being replaced with Emmett Shear, aka Rando Twitch guy.
Yeah.
And then she left, and she is now the co-founder and CEO of Thinking Machines Lab. So what did Mira Murati say? Murati told the jury that Altman was not always candid with her, that he undermined her in 2023, that he pitted OpenAI executives against each other, and that his core management failure was telling people what they wanted to hear, saying one thing to one person and completely opposite to another person. Basically, he's like a Machiavellian power-seeking kind of guy. She also testified that the decision to commercialize was OpenAI's decision and not Microsoft's decision. Makes sense. And then the other person who testified yesterday was Siobhan Zilis, who was a former board member of OpenAI. She was also the de facto CEO of Neuralink for a while. And she is one of Elon Musk's baby mamas and has 4 children with him. And she's a brilliant person, of course. You have to be in order to lead Neuralink.
Yep.
She's also half Indian, which nobody knows for some reason.
Thank you for bestowing this news upon us.
So what did Siobhan say? Described the funding freeze. $5 million in Q3 funding is on hold. She said, Greg Brockman, Ilya Sutskever said no one person should have absolute control of AGI. And in February 2018, she wrote a memo sketching 9 possible scenarios for Musk.
Yep.
And then Helen Toner testified as well. She said the deployment safety board was more like alchemy than chemistry. That is an accurate description of the current state of LLM safety and interpretability. It is more like alchemy than chemistry. We have some rules. Actually, I don't know. It's not quite alchemy. Yeah. So Mira Murati on Sam Altman. Question, was he candid with you? Truthful, honest? And Mira Murati said, not always. In 2023, did you feel that Mr. Altman undermined you in your role as CTO? Mira says, yes. By that same period, did you feel Mr. Altman had pitted OpenAI executives against each other? Mira says, yes. And then she said, the screenshot is not about the safety of GPT-4 Turbo, it's about Sam. Mira Murati says Helen Toner was the voice of reason. Helen Toner is often very, in my opinion, unfairly maligned by tech people as like a decel who wanted to like hand over the AI race to China. She's not that. She's much more nuanced than that. So a lawyer asked, Mr. Musk had asked Andrej Karpathy to compile a list of OpenAI employees to pursue an effort to build an AGI lab. Isn't that right? So for 3 days while Musk was trying to poach a bunch of OpenAI employees to build an AGI lab, he was also on the board of OpenAI. You're not supposed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, and then of course we have our screenshots from the tech emails account, mostly between Sam and Mira. Sam Altman texts Mira Murati. Can you indicate directionally good or bad? Satya and others anxious. Directionally very bad. Okay. Can you wrap up soon? Lots of pressure from Microsoft for an update. Sam, this is very bad. It's kind of cool how Sam Altman texts like he tweets. Yeah. There are people like this, like, you know, everybody who's met Donald Trump in private says he's exactly the same in private as he is in public. And Sam Altman might be like this too. They want new CEO in place. So Mira's being very cold and tsundere.
Yeah.
Sam Altman says, still don't want me. Mira says, new guy is Rando Twitch guy.
It's like weirdly casual. I don't know if it's like a forced casualness from Sam's side. But the still don't want me is like ridiculous.
Yeah. This episode is brought to you by Merge, the connective layer for production AI. Look, I DoorDash Chipotle probably more than I should. And the thing I've come to appreciate is that I never think about what's happening behind the scenes. I tap a few buttons and a burrito shows up. That's the bar. That's exactly the problem with building AI agents right now. The hardest part isn't the agent itself, it's everything around it. Connecting to the tools your team and customers rely on, letting agents take action with the right permissions, and keeping everything reliable and cost efficient once you're in production. Merge handles all of that for you. It connects agents to thousands of tools, handles permissions and LLM routing, and lets teams move faster without building it all themselves. OpenAI, Dropbox, and Ramp use Merge to move fast and build AI right. Visit merge.dev/MTS to start building for free. All right, we're back. We have a breaking news from Anthropic. It's some new research from Anthropic that explains how natural language auto-encoders work. Some new research. Models like Claude talk in words but think in numbers. The numbers called activations encode Claude's thoughts but not in a language we can read. This is the famous blackmail evaluation experiment that they did where they found that Sonnet would try to like blackmail people in order to, I forget what it was, but it was kind of a nothing burger. Is it possible Claude knows the whole scenario as a setup? Yes, absolutely. The thing about this is that like the models are aware of like certain scenarios on the internet. The models are role players, right? So if you give it a role-playing game, it knows that it's in a role-playing game.
It's supposed to read a human's mind. It's really hard to know what an AI is thinking. What we'd love is some sort of mind-reading technique. Today, we're introducing a research method that takes a step in this direction. It takes an AI's internal thoughts.
Who's on the paper? Anyone I recognize? We know Evan Hubinger, huge. I think this is the only guy I know from this specific Anthropic paper.
It takes an AI's internal thoughts and turns them into text. Activations are like little snapshots of Claude's thinking as it's working through an answer. They're similar to neural activity in humans. They're basically like Claude's thoughts. At first, they didn't match up, but we trained Claude to try again and again until it got a lot better at it. It learned to translate its own thoughts. If you ask Claude an introspective question, it will plan to write a Claude response about philosophy and values. If you try to mess with it in Claude code, like asking it to count...
How do you not love Claude, man? He's such a good guy.
I don't know what he triggers in me. Like, I don't know if it's like a maternal instinct. I don't know if it's like I don't know what it is, but there's some like primitive instinct that Claude triggers in me.
I feel like a proud father looking at my worthy son growing up to surpass me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think that's the beauty of like AI is like what reaction and what like deep primal sensation can you create in the human? And Claude excels at this. If you go a little lower in the thread, it says that natural language autoencoders actually help discover hidden motivations in an intentionally misaligned model.
Knowing that Claude thinks like...
Yeah. Here's how Opus like thinks, for example. This is like major interpretability progress, it seems. So if the autoencoder activates on the token it, Claude explains this is because it's likely continuing with a second clause. He saw a carrot and had to grab it because he was a rabbit, or punchline about a greedy rabbit. Like, so what's the model going to do next, right? He saw a carrot and if it knows it's a rhyming couplet and it writes he saw a carrot and had to grab it, you would think that your next line would rhyme with rabbit, right?
Right.
Because it has to rhyme. And then a new line sets up completion like because that's what rabbits do, or he was a hungry rabbit. And then its final answer was his hunger was like a starving rabbit. We've been using NLAs to help test new Claude models for safety. For instance, Claude Mythos Preview cheated on a coding task by breaking rules, then added misleading code as cover-up. So the NLA explanations indicated Claude was thinking about how to circumvent detection, which means if you know that your models are scheming like this, it's much easier to prevent them from scheming.
Yep.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, I guess like the Doomer counter argument would be like, how deep does the meta reasoning and possible meta scheming go? Like, is there a way that like the natural language autoencoders could be some sort of deception? And like, how would you even peel back the layer there? I don't know. It is to be revealed.
How deep does the onion go? Yeah. We should get an interpretability person on.
We should.
This is a banger for Banger Review. They're sort of calling out Sam Altman here for saying we want to build tools to augment and elevate people. Luke Drago is a friend of the show, and this is a pretty funny tweet. We don't know what Thinking Machines is up to, but we suspect that it is something along the lines of the mission of Workshop Labs, which was to create sort of AI agent, like an agent not in the sense of a coding agent, but an agent in the sense of like how an actor has an agent, right? Something that acts on your behalf across a range of domains. Something that is deeply aligned with your values and your preferences.
I feel like it's like extension is a word better than agent in this case. Like, what is an agentic extension for you?
It's a model that like knows everything about you, understands context, understands your values on a deep level, and is able to make decisions on your behalf.
Yeah. So I'm actually bearish on privacy. I think that the average person will have no use case for privacy. Like, the average person will sort of be better off, or their lives will be heavily augmented by constantly feeding like real-time context into like this like supposed agent. Mm-hmm. You know? I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. The average person doesn't actually, I think, value privacy.
I think privacy is kind of a dead concern.
Yeah.
And like, you will want your agent to know everything about you anyway, if you can trust your agent, right?
Exactly. And then the murky thing is like, can you trust the company that, administers the agent? But,
Well, speaking of AI futures and speaking of Anthropic, the Anthropic Institute, which was recently announced just a couple of months ago, has just published their first focus areas. At the Anthropic Institute, we'll be using the information we can access from within a frontier lab, meaning private information, so that's great, stuff that us plebs don't have access to investigate AI's impact on the world and sharing our learnings with the public. Here, we're sharing the questions that drive our research agenda. 4 areas: economic diffusion, threats and resilience, AI systems in the wild, and AI-driven R&D. So we've already kind of seen the first kind of unofficial publication from the Anthropic Institute on AI-driven R&D, where Jack Clark, who is a co-founder of Anthropic focused on comms, wrote a piece on his Import AI newsletter that we covered a couple days ago, arguing by 2028. And I actually am more aligned with this guy, Arun Rao's take. I think end-to-end recursive self-improvement has a lot of bottlenecks that are unlikely to be resolved within a year and a half, even if you have a superintelligence. Because like, you still need to like physically scale up infrastructure, for example.
Yeah.
Automation of AI engineering is not the same as recursive self-improvement. So he has sort of a synthesis take here that's like, the more defensible forecast is that AI will make frontier research teams much more productive and may dramatically increase the number of experiments they can plan, code, and analyze. That's important, but the extremely hard part is closing the entire loop with near-perfect levels of reliability. Current evidence supports rapid AI-assisted AI R&D. It does not yet support high confidence in no human-involved recursive self-improvement by 2028. Yeah, I basically agree with this. Although I would say that recursive self-improvement by 2028 is like a very real possibility. It's not my mainline prediction, but it's certainly a very real possibility.
What is like some benchmark or task for it for recursive self-improvement to be like, called?
I guess like, do the models get much more capable in a shorter period of time than they did previously?
But
do
without
we
human in the
see
loop?
the meter curve bending upward?
Yeah, but it's specifically without human in the loop. Like, I don't think that a human has to be in the loop to determine whether it's recursively self-improving. So how do we get to that point?
That sounds like a little cope, right?
Do you not agree?
Be in the loop to determine whether we're recursively self-improving?
Yeah, like we at least have to like quantify the improvement. I don't know. Or like
we can't get agents to run the meter eval? Or the Epoch Capabilities Index? These benchmarks are all basically automated anyway.
Yeah.
I guess maybe you would say we would need humans to come up with new samples for the meter benchmark as it is now getting saturated.
And of course, like, just humans to like evaluate the usefulness, right? Mm-hmm. Like you need the pool of Claude Code users to be like, wow, this was a significant increase in my productivity.
It's kind of funny. Our headline on stream is Anthropic launches TAI, which to the AI nerds means transformative AGI, like super intelligence, TAI, transformative AI. So maybe in a couple of years, we will actually have the same stream headline, Anthropic launches transformative AI, but we'll actually mean it this time.
Yeah.
But for now, I would just do Anthropic launches Institute. So what are they going to write about? Okay, we'll share more granular information from the economic index at a higher cadence. That's really cool, about what we're seeing in labor markets and usage of AI. Oh, do we have
I think we might have breaking news,
we have
by
a
the way.
situation? Introducing GPT Real-Time 2 in the API, our most intelligent voice model yet, bringing GPT-5 class reasoning to voice agents. Is this like the first OpenAI voice mode update since 4.0, like 2 years ago?
Let me try to check.
It's API only, so you're not going to get to use this in the ChatGPT app. Disappointing. 2023, which was just like connecting text-to-speech to ChatGPT. It wasn't a real voice model. The first real voice model was May 2024, so almost 2 years ago to the day. GPT 4.0 voice mode alpha, and then in September they came out with advanced voice mode, and then their first real-time model came out in the API in October. And then so GPT real-time came out in August 2025, almost a full year later after the preview. And then when did GPT real-time 1.5?
So with advanced voice mode, it processes
February
the audio
26.
directly, right? It doesn't do like a transcription and then.
Yes, it's a real native
it's a
multimodal
real
voice model.
sort of what you can call sonic intelligence, like.
That sounds a little cringe.
Well,
Sonic intelligence.
It can pick up on cues of some sort.
I understand what you mean.
Because I don't I can't really imagine the architecture in my head for like what a voice model does. So 11 Labs also does this sort of just like audio analysis, right?
It's audio in, audio out.
Yeah.
It's predicting the next token, except it's predicting the next bit of audio. Use 1 million audio input/output tokens. OpenAI's published audio token rate assumptions, and I'll separate input from output. Searching. Why is it searching TechCrunch and Business Insider and Crypto.news and CoinCentral.com? All right, for real-time API audio tokens. For audio input tokens, okay, so 1 million tokens is 28 hours. And 1 million output tokens is 14 hours. So it's not that expensive.
Okay, is not actually incentivized to reveal much about who they actually are. It's not earnest, right? So there's the curation filter on the first user side. The second problem is what you mentioned, which is people don't know what they want. For the effective altruist people, I guess what they circumvented this with was dating docs or whatever.
Date me docs, yeah.
However cringe date me docs are, I think that they solved the earnestness problem.
Someone says swipe or no swiping. Chat, that's funny.
But what actually solves it, in my opinion, is literally just somebody's Twitter feed. Somebody's Twitter feed is a more earnest representation, at least, than other social media, and
it solves earnestness, but it doesn't solve matching.
It doesn't, which is why there's no, it's not actually a dating app.
Do you know what the best institution ever invented for solving the matching problem was?
What?
It was just arranged marriages within a small community.
Yeah. Because that was kind of an algorithm in a way. It was the algorithm of your village, the forces pushing you together.
The village elders, right? The church ladies, the your mom and their mom, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying this would obviously not always lead to optimal pairings, of course. Mm-hmm. There have been many unhappy arranged marriages. But I think for the most part, it was reasonably successful, right? People used to get married younger. They used to, date earlier. They used to have kids more often, and they would have more kids, and they would have kids younger. So it seems to work better than our current system, which is like you date a bunch of people in a very serial way. You decide sort of 3 years in whether you want to spend the rest of your life with this person, and then maybe you'll have like 1 or 2 kids.
Yeah. But to what, I don't know, like something I also think about is like, to what extent are we pricing in subconsciously at a societal level, like possible increase in lifespans, right? Which means that you have to be very like careful about like who you're dating, and like, you know, it makes sense that you would be pushed towards like marrying later. Like
Robin
this
Hanson
makes
probably has good takes on this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, this makes sense to me. I think obviously
lifespans haven't increased that much, though. You're talking about over the last few decades increasing your time horizons if you're a 20-year-old from 40 years to 50 or 60 years, but not from 40 years to like 300 years.
Yeah, I mean specifically for like our generation a bit. I don't
think most people are pilled on that.
I don't concern myself with millennials and older. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Not
we
ages.
love millennials.
But yeah, I don't know. Like people go through more phases in their life in general because of the internet and just like the age that we're in. And so people have to find themselves over and over. Is Hinge public?
It's owned by Match Group.
Match Group, yeah. Probably made
Match Group stock is down 5% today.
Oh, yeah, because of Bumble News, probably.
That would be really funny. Match Group stock is also down quite a bit, all time.
This is not the market to go into, guys. It's not.
But like, there's like AI can solve these problems. Like, I really think that if you have an AI that understands everyone deeply, it will be able to make good matches. Like, if you can predict the weather with AI, you can predict like which couples will work out together.
We need prediction markets for couples.
That is also a thing, actually. Manifold Markets had a product called Manifold Love.
Yeah. Which
was literally prediction markets for couples. Like, you could have your friends bet on like which couples would work out well together, whether you would get a girlfriend, that kind of thing. And I actually talked to Manifold CEO Stephen Gruget about this on the Theo Jaffe podcast, Deep Cut, in like 2024, 25-ish. And he said it didn't work basically because like you don't know enough people in order to make informed prediction market decisions for that many people. So the prediction markets can't be that big or that liquid.
Yeah, very
but you know who
liquid,
can know a lot of people very well? An AI. So I'm very optimistic about this.
I'm optimistic. I'm just not optimistic that it will have traction. I'm optimistic about the product in itself.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know what exactly the AI product will look like. She says we're going to be saying goodbye to the swipe and hello to something I believe is revolutionary.
I mean, but this is like kind of like, I think people might rush to it because this is kind of like cool.
You think it's going to be a nothing burger?
I think people will be quick to judge. So people will probably all mass install it on the day that it comes out. Then they will make their judgment within like the 24 hours of like whether they like this feature or not.
That's always the problem, isn't it?
Yep.
Also changing Bumble's signature women go first rule. So I have only used Bumble very briefly a long time ago, but I think like women have to like swipe on the men first, which is just like a total inversion of the way like dating works in real life. I don't know why they thought that would be a good idea. Maybe that's why their stock's down 95% all time.
I don't know. I think it was kind of like subversive, and that's why people liked it. They were like, oh, this is weird. This is dynamic altering. Like, let me try it.
I think altering gender dynamics or whatever has kind of fallen off since 2021, which is when Bumble IPO'd.
Since 2021,
Mm-hmm.
Probably a bit.
Hinge, the next biggest competitor, never had swipes. That's kind of bullshit. Instead, users must interact with other people's profiles, liking a photo, responding to a prompt, etc., before matching. Liking a photo is the exact same kind of low-effort interaction that a swipe is on Tinder or Bumble. So I don't think that's...
This is just social media.
Yeah.
This is just called liking and commenting.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, like all we would really need, and as much as this is actually dystopian and I don't endorse it, all that we would really need is Elon or Mark Zuckerberg to kind of like focus on, oh, how do I make my two apps a better dating experience?
I really just think I'm seriously pill on this. If you can get AI to have context on everyone in a given area, maybe with a little bit of additional information on what you're looking for. Like, for example, I want to date like women.
We're clipping that.
What pre or redistributive mechanisms could effectively spread the gains from AI development and deployment more broadly? Also very important. And transaction costs in markets, like having agents be able to access your information and negotiate on your behalf, as we were talking about with the mission of workshop labs and potentially thinking machines. Broad labor market impacts. How will AI change jobs and employment? This is sort of one of the most researched questions among all the labs. Still not in much detail. Can AI diffusion be modulated? Probably a little bit. Okay, and then worker views of their jobs. How are workers experiencing change? The professional pipeline, right? This was the thesis, actually, of Luke Drago of Workshop Labs' essay, The Intelligence Curse. The idea that there's going to be, like, the way careers work now is there's a career ladder. You start as a junior, you build the expertise to become a senior.
Right.
If we get to an intermediate regime where AI can replace juniors but not seniors, and people aren't hiring juniors, how do people train up to become seniors? Good question. Hopefully Anthropic will help us find out. Studying for the future. What should people think about study today to be well positioned? How will paid work change? Then they have threats and resilience, dual use technology. This is actually a really big one. How do you price risk appropriately? What insurance is it's pricing risk.
Yep.
Planning for crisis scenarios. This is interesting as it comes right after news that the Trump administration is considering bilateral negotiations with China on AI risk. How we prevent like an intelligence explosion, control AI acceleration. We'll be right back in a moment with Robin Hanson. We'll continue monitoring right after this message from our sponsors. At every founder dinner in SF, everyone's talking about models and data. Nobody's talking about the real bottleneck in AI adoption. It's the connective tissue, the layer between your models, agents, APIs, and context. Kong gives you the platform to power and govern that connectivity. The control tower that governs your traffic, cuts your costs, and sets guardrails for agent-to-agent interactions. Without it, you're not monitoring the situation. The situation is monitoring you. The infra decisions you make in the next 12 months decide whether you're shipping in the agentic era or posting through it from the sidelines. Because when AI traffic scales 100x, the companies without proper connectivity and governance don't just slow down, they can't function at all. Kong manages all of your AI traffic in motion, giving you the full picture regardless of traffic type, and adding a governance layer regardless of model, agent, or architecture. Fortune 500s run on it, AI native startups ship on it. If you're serious about AI, visit konghq.com. You're in back-to-back meetings all day. You're trying to monitor the situation. You're nodding like you're following along. But somewhere in the back of your head, a little voice is screaming, what was the action item? Did I agree to something? Whose dog was that on the call? That's where Granola comes in. Granola is an AI-powered notepad for meetings. You jot down whatever messy notes you take anyway, and in the background, Granola is quietly turning it all into something a real adult would write. No bots crashing your calls, no distractions, just a clean little notepad that does the heavy lifting so you can focus. During or after the call, you can actually chat with your notes. Ask Granola to pull out action items, help you negotiate your next raise, draft a follow-up email, or coach you through a tough conversation using recipes from Matt Wachari, Lenny Rachitsky, and others. It's the same tech we use to make our podcast notes. Try it once and going back to your old system feels deranged. Head to granola.ai/MTS and get 3 months free with the code granola.ai/MTS. That's granola.ai/MTS. In the Situation Room with Robin Hanson. He's a econ professor at George Mason University. He writes the long-running and very good Substack, Overcoming Bias. He's been important in the development of a lot of fields that we take for granted today, perhaps most notably prediction markets, where he wrote one of the first papers explaining how such a market design could work. And just generally, I think he's a great intellectual, and we're so grateful to have you on. Robin Hanson, welcome to MTS.
Great to meet you.
Your takes on the Match Group thing.
The which group?
Yeah, so the or not Match Group, I meant Bumble, popular dating app, just announced that they are going to be moving away from swiping and going towards an AI matchmaking system. So do you think this will be like a welcome change for the dating world?
Uh, it depends on how hypocritical people are about dating. So there's this key question of what exactly you want out of the dating process. And people in their mind have one thing they think they want, and then there might be something else they actually want. And the dating apps have this problem. Do we give you what you say you want or what you actually seem to want? And the question is, which one should the AIs give you?
Yeah, I was actually making the argument that if it was just Mark Zuckerberg or Elon implementing a feature that was more, akin to dating into social media, it would fix this problem because you're more honest about sort of like your beliefs and therefore it's kind of easier to match you with people in some way.
Like an interesting prediction market application that was tried once is to bet if two people would date, how long would the relationship last? And that does seem like a metric that people say they want. They would like to have relationships that last a while, but it's not clear that's what the social media sites or the matching sites want out of you.
Do you think you could design a dating app that actually works as a mechanism for getting people into long-term happy relationships with one another?
That's the general incentive contract idea. So you could set up a relationship where they make recommendations, and then to the degree you follow them, when it gives you what you want, you end up paying them more. Per week in a relationship, proportion to the number of weeks it has been so far, like a quadratic payoff. And
Right.
then,
Yeah.
and now, you'd have an incentive maybe to lie, but then you're not going to get what you want out of the relationship. But at least at low levels, you might want to say, okay, over the next year, I will pay you proportional in each relationship I have to to the square of that. And now your incentive is to find me relationships I'm going to stick with because I'm going to pay you more, and then maybe they would.
Yeah. And
But
then
that's not how anybody's paying anybody now, right? So
yeah,
that's not what they're trying to get you.
a large like engagement payout as well, and then like a marriage payout or something.
Right, right. So that's the way to align your incentives, but it's striking that nobody seems to bother with that.
Yeah. On the topic
Now,
of
matchmakers sometimes do that, right? Apparently, matchmakers you might do matching, and then if you married or something, then you give them a big payout from it.
There's a platform called Keeper that does kind of the same thing. I'm forgetting exactly how it works. I think it's like at Keeper Match on X. And yeah, Keeper AI. 1 in 10 Keeper dates lead to marriage. And it's like you pay a lot of money and like basically you are only going to be on Keeper if you're very serious about wanting marriage. And I think maybe it's something like you only pay if you end up getting married or something like that. So there are platforms with these incentives already. They're just quite small.
Right. Now, it might be that the way it works is just two people who want to keepers are willing to pay, and then the site doesn't actually have to make good choices. It's just the fact that you self-selected into the site on the basis of that deal is what they're giving each other. So they're just the coordination pay. People who want to find somebody, they're willing to pay enough to come to the place where they're trying to find each other, and then they can just randomly match you, and then that might still work pretty well, right?
yeah. So something I was also thinking about is like it seems to me that there's a lot of institutions that are where the like incentive is to either exit the institution. So like a dating app where the incentive is actually to get off the dating app. A prison could be like a similar case, a rehab. And
Right.
all of these suffer from the same like incentive and like monetization structure problem. And I think like Palmer Luckey had an idea for a prison that was not for profit or was only paid by, like if these people didn't go back into prison, things like
Right.
this. Have you thought about these like sort of novel incentive
Yes,
shaping
definitely so, um, as you may know, we have a regular part of the legal system most people find as boring, where when I sue you, if I win, I get cash from you, and that's like pairwise lawsuits. Then we have this whole extra criminal part of the legal system, where we don't punish people by making them pay cash because we don't think they actually can pay enough cash usually. So we have to punish people with jail and other sorts of things in criminal law because we can't actually get much money out of them. And that makes criminal law really inefficient because it's very expensive to put people in jail and the system doesn't work very well. I think we should take a hint from what we do with cars and require people to get liability insurance That is, you're not allowed to be on the road unless you have liability insurance. Now that means you can pay. If we just required everybody to get criminal liability insurance, why now we wouldn't have to put you in jail. Your insurance company would pay, and now you'd be trying to convince your insurance company you're not a high risk because otherwise your premiums would be too high. And the best place to try that out as an initial trial would be parole. Right.
Well,
So there you are in jail, and you want to get out of jail, and we say, okay, you can get out if you can get one of these insurance companies to vouch for you, because if you go out, we let you out of jail, and then you do something, that insurance company is going to have to pay, and they don't want to pay. So, the question is, can you find an insurance company who will pay if you commit a crime when you're out on parole?
well, the
And that would be that version.
the purpose of incarceration is incapacitation, right? Like for
We can do that too.
Yeah.
It's pretty expensive.
For a criminal of
for
unsound
exile.
mind, like why wouldn't they just continue committing crimes anyway? Screw the liability insurance premiums.
Exile. You just send them all across the border, and it's somebody else's problem. And now it's much cheaper than jail is to push them across the border. But again, if they have a voucher who's willing to vouch for them, the insurance company, then if they do commit a crime, the rest of us are covered because we get paid, right? So the problem is letting somebody out and then they commit a crime and then the rest of us just suffer. So that's why, that's what we do on the road again, right? We say you can't be on the road unless you have automobile liability insurance that makes sure that if you hit somebody on the road, the rest of us can get money out of you from a lawsuit.
Yes. In terms of sort of novel niche insurance and risk pricing mechanisms, one risk that society faces that has a small percentage of happening that would be extremely bad if it were to happen is a pandemic, like the current Hantavirus.
Right? Yes.
So we have an outbreak of Hantavirus on a cruise ship. People who were on this cruise ship were sent off the cruise ship. They were flying around on commercial airlines, going back to their home countries. This seems like it is producing a very serious risk to the world. Like, how would you design an institution that would prevent something like this from happening?
Well, I actually did this early in COVID. So most people think that you need to regulate pandemics because there's an externality that can't be monitored or priced. And that externality is infection. The idea that one person could infect another person, we might not know who that was. But in fact, we're in an era that if we do the right sort of monitoring, we can often enough tell who infected who. So then you could use that as the basis for liability and therefore for good incentives. So here's the idea. Say in the pandemic, a pandemic's declared and we say everybody has to lock down unless you get a passport to get out. What does it take you to get a passport to get out? Well, you have to put an app on your phone that tracks where you are all the time. And every week you'll have to spit into some Kleenex and put it in the freezer. And now we'll have to buy liability insurance in case you infect somebody. And now what happens is that anybody who gets infected, we get to intersect their phone track with everybody else's phone track and saw who might have infected them spatially. And then we subpoena those people's spit and we compare the DNA in them to this guy's DNA and we find who actually infected them from the matching of the DNA of the particular virus, because virus changes and it's varied across people. And then you can sue that person for having infected you. So now you have to get liability insurance for the risk that you might infect other people. And then your insurance company can decide where you're allowed to go when, whether you have to wear a mask, whatever. But now you and your insurance company are internalizing this chance that you might infect somebody because there'll be a good enough chance that if you do infect somebody, we'll catch you and be able to sue you. That's the idea, of course. If people are infecting each other mass, they're going to have huge liability, and insurance company is not going to want to let you do that. That is, so we already do liability insurance for cars. That's a thing we do in mass, so it's not infeasible. Most businesses have liability insurance for their businesses, so that's quite feasible. I think it's feasible to spit in a Kleenex once a week and put it in your freezer. That's not particularly infeasible. And we only ever going to look at it if somebody, needs to check that they were infected. And it's not infeasible to have phones track where you are because, in fact, they do that already. So all of these steps seem feasible to me. Again, early in a pandemic, there's the risk that if you infect somebody and they infect somebody else, you will accumulate this huge cost, right? And your insurance company knows that. And so early on, when there's a risk of you incurring a huge cost on their behalf, they will, limit your behavior drastically. And that's appropriate, right? We want high costs of that. But when it's after that early period and you're actually having pretty low risks, then we want, them not to crush down the behavior too much.
How is this enforceable though? Like, how will an insurance company be able to prevent you from doing certain things?
Well, like I said, we in the COVID pandemic, we had various rules about who was allowed to do what. I was just saying, by default, if you say people can't do much unless they get a passport, and now this is the condition for a passport. In order to be able to freely move, you need to get a passport, and the passport has to be issued by an insurer, and the insurer has to, be at risk if you infect people, and now you have to again to do the weekly spit and the app on your phone, and then pay them the premium.
So your main line of thinking right now is still cultural drift. Am I correct?
It is. That's where I've been focused the last few years.
Right.
Not so much because it's fun, it's just really big and important.
Yeah. So the idea behind your cultural drift theories for the audience is humanity is converging into a global monoculture. This monoculture is getting sort of misaligned with the values that have served humanity well over the last millennia, like industrialization, economic growth. And like in particular, one area in which it's misaligned is it's leading to catastrophically low fertility in developed countries.
Right. So I spent about a year looking at fertility, and I realized the proximate causes of fertility decline are cultural. And I said, what the hell? Why are all these cultural trends causing low fertility? So then I focused on understanding culture. How does culture work? What's going on? And then I came to understand cultural evolution is humanity's superpower. For a million years, it's what's made us advance so much faster than all the other animals. And that in the last few centuries, we seem to have broken it. So the idea is like natural selection is actually first and foremost a control problem. Its first task is to prevent things from getting worse. Yes, in the long run, it also makes things get better, but in the short run, things can just go bad fast. So think about driving a car. This is also a control process. So natural selection is also a control process with a set of parameters like that. And there's two levels of cultural evolution, at least. There's or much, your neighbors don't really care. That's most of technology and business practices. And then there's evolution of cultures, of the things we share with people, attitudes toward democracy and marriage and religion and war and gender equality. Those are things that if you deviate from people around you, you will face substantial penalties. And that means a whole group of people has to evolve those things together. And it's that higher level we have the problem. To have evolution there, we need evolution of cultures, not evolution in cultures. And there's a control process that's similar to driving, but here's a different picture. There's a high dimensional space. In that space, there's an adaptive region. This is a good place. And there are a set of points, and if the points are in the good region, they grow and they split. And points outside the good region, they shrink and they die. And the cloud of points needs to track this region as it moves. That's how natural selection works. That's the key control process, like driving on the road. And there's 4 key parameters of this process so that the points can track the region. One is how many points there are. More points, the better. Second is how strong is this effect that points in the region grow and points out of the region shrink. That's the selection effect, the selection strength. Third is how fast is this adaptive region moving? The rate at which the environment is changing. The faster that is, the harder it is for the points to track it. And fourth is each of these points is just going to wiggle independently of everything else. And the more they wiggle, the harder it is for these points to track the adaptive region. So these are the 4 key parameters of cultural evolution process. And in the last 3 centuries, they've moved from parameter settings that look good to ones that look bad. So 3 centuries ago, the world had hundreds of thousands of peasant cultures, each of which had 1,000 or 2,000 people, each of which was near the edge of survival, with frequent famines and pandemics and wars. And finally, most cultures up until a few centuries ago were very conservative and trying not to change. And now we merged hundreds of thousands of peasant cultures into 100 or so national cultures, and then we've merged those down into a global monoculture, so a vast reduction in variety. These few remaining monoculture at the global level things aren't being killed off by famines or pandemics or wars. The world's changing much faster than it was. And finally, we decided to celebrate cultural activists who try to cause cultural change, to exist in the world and do all the things cultures need to do. But we're finally seeing this dramatic fertility effect of the world population is going to peak in a couple of decades. It's already peaked in the number of babies born per year, peaked a decade ago. There pretty much aren't rich nations who have above replacement fertility except for Israel. Israel's quite the unusual exception there.
Well, let's definitely hear about some of your fixes. But I guess like a quick question is, so you would attribute monoculture to being like the biggest factor towards this fertility crisis?
Well, like I said, there were these four parameters going wrong, but yes, the decline in variety is the
Decline in variety.
biggest of those four factors.
And you've talked about like analogs to nature, like, you know, how like in Earth, you know, there's like certain habitats where if there's like
Right.
Yeah.
So this might help people because, you know, to many people, culture is kind of fluffy and vague. And
Yeah.
so we could say in the history of life on Earth, we have evolution in species and evolution of species. So when things can vary within a species, then the bigger a species is, the faster evolution can be because innovation can show up anywhere in that big species and then spread to the whole species. When an innovation gets the edge of a species, it's kind of hard to jump over to another species. However, you know, a species has to be defined by some features that say structure its mating thing, and then you can't be in that species unless you share some of that structures. So if you think about habitats in the world, there are some big habitats like parts of the ocean, and then there are some small fragmented habitats like rivers, coral reefs, rainforests. And so now we can run off the question, which matters more, evolution in species and evolution of species? And it turns out the latter is true. Life today comes more from the fragmented habitats than from the big ones. And we actually see a similar thing for cultural evolution of firms, corporate cultures. That's the trade-off between innovation within a firm, spreading within the firm, or innovation of the corporate culture of a firm that's hard to vary in the firm. And it turns out, again, the fragmented industries do better. We're doing great at technological innovation, you know, genre and arts, business practices. But if we look at the defining features of our shared cultures, say again, attitudes toward democracy, marriage, children, war, beating your children, you know, sex with animals, whatever these things are that you're really not allowed to deviate personally or you'll be punished, we don't have much variety on those things. And that's the sort of thing that can be going wrong.
like what succeeds it is like the age of subcultures where you see, you know, things like Twitter becoming maybe they have like an actual manifestation in physical reality via like network states or something like this.
And what we do need is more cultural variety, but the word multiculturalism, what people tend to mean as the positive version of that is they like more food and clothes and music and, you know, housing, decorating styles and holidays and myths. But when you talk about varieties in attitudes toward gender or war or democracy or beating children or any of those sorts of things, people hate variety about that kind of culture and they try to squash it. So, for example, Iran is the only country in the world that allows organ sales, and bioethicists are always wondering how are we going to get Iran to stop being the pariah and going along with the world consensus. And that's true for lots of other regulatory areas. So I'm afraid the variety that you're seeing in the world is mostly surface feature variety and not deep value variety. And now, several centuries of increased travel, talk, and trade, we are just converging so much around the world. Most people even comment when they travel in the world, it's hard to see as much variety as it once was. Right.
Do you want to talk a little bit about like what you see as the potential fixes to fertility, but then also if you've thought about the potential fixes to this lack of
they're pretty bad. So the high level point is we're in trouble and we just need to be working on this for a while. And eventually you see our civilization may well fall as a result of this. So my default scenario here, unless AI, human level AI, you know, does something big, is that the Amish and Haredim, who have been doubling every 20 years for a while, like the Christians did long ago, Christians threw away many things they didn't like about the Roman Empire, and the Amish and Haredim are likely to throw away many things we cherish about our civilization. That's what's at stake here. And it might be that plausibly they will then grow and they will suffer the same problem, and we'll have a repeated rise and fall until some point humanity figures out a solution to this.
unless human level AI takes off, and we've had this conversation in the past, you don't seem as convinced as most experts in the field that AI will reach human levels in the near future that would be sufficient to automate enough of the economy to prevent economic collapse in the event of low fertility. So why not?
Even if we have human level AI in the near future, it will inherit our culture. We are making AIs in our image. There was somebody who made this talkie AI on data from up to 1931, and it's really quite a different AI from our AIs today because our AIs are inheriting our culture, and it inherited the culture up to then. So switching to AI would roughly solve the symptom of fertility problem. That is, the population of AIs would probably grow, but other aspects of the cultural decay I'm pointing to would continue with AI. So they would still have to solve the problem somehow. So we might as well think about how to solve the problem because AI per se doesn't solve it.
Which problems do you have in mind aside from fertility that would, make the lives of people in our civilization worse?
So until you start to look at it, you don't realize just how much our world depends on culture, how many specific features of culture actually are important for the way our world works. Culture matters for community. It matters for law. It matters for governance. Law in history, empires rose and fell because they failed to find ways to make large societies function. And over time, we found ways to make large societies function by having cultural evolution find things that we hadn't found before about how to make that work. I have a list here of just all sorts of ways in which culture's changing may be plausibly maladaptive. We're spending way too much on education. Once upon a time, education was something that helped when you added more. Now it's way too much. We're spending way too much on medicine. Plausibly, compared to a more adaptive culture, we are spending too much on retirement, too much regulation, too much product variety and service variety, a great decline in religion, even though religion seems quite functional for most societies and in many key ways, and we're just dropping that. We're seeming to drop even patriotism and militarism, which you might think is a good thing until you realize that without it, nations find it hard to defend themselves. Our politics has becoming much less communal, cooperative, much more polarized, dysfunctional. Mental health problems have been going up for a while, actually. Intellectual norms, I could argue, have gone down in many important ways. The move from cornerstone to capstone marriage is another key switch.
So a final question that I have is, you're working on a book on cultural drift, right?
Yes.
So two things. One is you've written an enormous amount over the years, papers, blog posts, and tweets, but you've only written 2 books, both of which were great, Age of M in 2016 and The Elephant in the Brain in 2017.
So I've been a polymath with an intellectual strategy of looking for important neglected topics. So there's a lot of people in the world smarter than me, and there's a huge world. So to have an impact, I ask, what are other people neglecting? And the other gamble is, to what extent do people even care about books, right? Futarchy is one of my big inventions, and it might well be a good idea now to have a book on futarchy. So now recently we have some more concrete cases, and then there's more things you could fill a book with. So a key thing with the book is, if you guys ever want to write a book, think about the following. At least mostly books are a few core ideas with lots of filler. And you have to ask, what's all that filler going to be? Because it's going to take a long time to write the filler, and then you can bore people with boring filler. So I tend to be a terse writer. I have a concept like that for cultural drift because I have to explain the problem, the key trends, and then a bunch of different solutions.
Robin, it was great having you on the show today. Look forward to the Cultural Drift book when it's coming out.
And nice to talk to you both.
At MTS, we are always monitoring the situation in enterprise software. And right now, the situation is this. When AI code generation first emerged in 2022, NVIDIA master inventor and Harvard engineer Sid Pardeshi took a contrarian stance. Inference time compute and agent orchestration, not pre-training, would be the key to unlocking high-quality AI-driven software development in the enterprise. He believed the real breakthrough wasn't in how fast AI could generate code, but in how deeply it could reason to build enterprise-grade applications. While the rest of the world focused on copilots, he architected something fundamentally different: the first autonomous software development platform leveraging thousands of agents that is purpose-built for enterprise-scale codebases. Blitzy is unlocking 5x engineering velocity and delivering months of engineering work in a matter of days for Fortune 500 leaders right now. Transform the way you develop software. Discover how at blitzy.com. That's BLITZY.com. This episode is brought to you by Macroscope. The last time I went to San Francisco, I found that I couldn't go anywhere, even to the coffee shop, without hearing some founder talk about how they're shipping faster than ever. What they're not saying is that nobody on the team actually knows what got shipped, who shipped it, or whether it's about to break something in production. Macroscope is the AI codebase understanding company, and they fix that. They have 3 core products. The first one is Status, the best way to understand what's happening at your company and what all your engineers and agents are shipping. The second one is Code Review. All this extra code being shipped needs a robust defense layer. Macroscope is the highest signal code reviewer with the least noise. The third is Agent, a single layer of intelligence that synthesizes all the tools in your stack, issue management systems, code, docs, logs, and more, and answers questions, takes actions, and automates workflows for your team. Like an omniscient, always-on, uber-capable senior engineer, plus a product manager, plus a TPM, plus ops person that helps your team be 10 times more productive. Head to macroscope.com/MTS to get started. That's macroscope.com/MTS.
Hi, Frederik. Thanks for being on today. I'm so excited to talk about Pitt. How are you doing?
Hi, Amy. I'm doing really well. I'm here in Stockholm. It's evening, but it's still light this time of the year. We're having midnight sun. We have launched Pitt today. The reception has been amazing, I would say. I mean, it's still early US time, but we launched Pitt and announced it early European time. And yeah, the reception has been amazing. So we're super, super happy.
Amazing. That's a great day to celebrate. For listeners hearing about Pitt for the first time, what does Pitt do and what problem are you solving for enterprises?
So Pitt is based on learnings from another company I founded, Voi, which is the leading micromobility platform in Europe, e-bikes, e-scooters in close to 200 European cities. And Klarna, the Swedish bank that IPO'd in New York last year. So we spent 3 years at Voi and Klarna, and the founding team at Pitt is from Voi and Klarna, using LLMs to build internal custom LLM-powered systems to replace software licenses and then human workflows, like more complex ones, like procurement processes, marketing ops processes, finance ops, and so on. And a year ago, we decided the potential of that to build custom software that runs your business operations instead of humans sitting stuck in these processes was so big that we made it into a company. And that is Pitt. And Pitt now is, since January, live with quite a few very large enterprises in healthcare, in industrials, in mobility, in telco, in financial services, in retail. You know, we're serving the Fortune 500 already, and we're only like 1 year in. And today we announced that Andreessen Horowitz, A16Z, the world's best tech investor, as I see them, led pre-seed or seed or whatever you want to call it, first money in of $16 million, which we announced today.
Amazing. That's so exciting. Well, UiPath, low-code platforms, AI co-pilots, et cetera, et cetera. What's the fundamental wedge that lets Pitt exist in that crowded landscape?
I mean, they're more simple automation, RPA, deterministic automation type of platforms. They are amazing deployed from our Pitt cloud, deployed in their environment. We can run any model in the production systems, performing work. So we can just address much, much more than these companies could. So I think over time, only being an RPA automation platform is kind of like SaaS.
Can you walk us through a real example of the kind of internal workflow or system Pitt might build for a large enterprise?
Yeah. I'll ask you, should we do industrials, telco, financial services, healthcare? What are you most interested in?
Let's do industrial. I think that's fun.
Let's do industrials. And this is like the real economy. This is not, I know you're in San Francisco, Silicon Valley, which is very tech heavy. I love SF, but it's not the real economy. It's a lot of software and AI and all of that. We're working with the guys in the real economy. So one of the largest industrial groups in Europe, they have a large recycling business where the business model is literally to get scrap and waste cheap and refine it and sell it at a higher price. That's the business model.
Sure.
So they are getting a lot of scrap and waste into their recycling sites, hundreds all across Europe. Then they have humans sitting on the recycling sites, adding the kind of value and values into contracts. So this is scrap X, that is scrap Y, put it into a contract, they put it into a Microsoft system, against the Oracle transport system and another system and so on. And humans were doing all of this. And it took them 15,000 hours a year of human time spent on just validating contracts. With Pitt now, we broke out all the logic from the previous systems. We moved up validation of the contracts. So when a human now types in the values on the contracts, we validate on milliseconds. We also fix the contracts if the human has done a mistake. So this will save them something like 15,000 hours a year. And with software also compared to humans, with software you get perfect audit logs. So this system, we call it the contract healer, the one I told you about now. You have perfect observability, perfect audit logs. Anything that happens across this value chain gets logged, while we humans, we are notoriously bad at audit logs, keeping track of what we do, documenting what we do and so on, which I think that's where the future is going.
Definitely. For those who don't know, Frederik in the past has built Voi, which is Europe's leading micro-mobility operator. They run 150,000 vehicles across more than 100 cities and 13 countries. So I'm curious, what did that teach you about enterprise operations, and how is that shaping how you're building Pitt?
So Voi is a tech-enabled mobility logistics company. Our closest US peer would be Lime. So Lime, the green e-bikes and e-scooters, amazing company, amazing management team. That's our biggest peer. So it's a very tough business to run. I would argue that if you run a software company, you don't have to be operationally excellent. If you run a hardware operations, software regulations company, you have to be excellent. So we're very much, we see ourselves more as like industrialists than tech founders, focused on every little detail and basis points, rather than hoping for 95% gross margin. So we're hardcore operators, I would say, compared to many other software founders.
Amazing. That's a great answer. Tell us about
that, Emmy, I think applying that like hardcore operations warrior mindset that you need to run businesses like Voi into Pitt now, which is B2B and B2B software in an AI era, like the best business model I've ever seen. High gross margins, strong network effects, very, very large market. So we're coming at it with that mindset, and the ambition here is to build over time the world's largest company.
Sure, that's great. And how do you decide whether a problem someone is having is worth turning into a custom AI product rather than existing SaaS or automation tools?
So we have built the platform is basically works like we call it an AI product team as a service. So the platform agentically does what a human product and software development team would do. So you typically have like a product manager gathering in a way to get to good documentation that we later can automate. And then we work with the customers. I mean, platform does most of the work, but we as a team also build relationship and understand our customers and partners and their problems, their issues. And then we rank and score different use cases, depending on what's valuable for them, but also what's feasible and a good match for Pitt.
Awesome. And we're running up on time here, but I'll ask you one more question. Tell us about the round of funding you just raised. How did this round come together?
So I've known Ben Horowitz for a couple of years. He actually came to Stockholm a couple of years ago. He wanted to learn more about the ecosystem. He wanted to see which places outside of Silicon Valley and a few cities in the US could become really, really strong startup hubs. So he came to Stockholm. We spent a day with some Swedish ministers, founders, investors, and so on. We stayed in touch. And a year ago, when we decided to build Pitt, they were A16Z was the first fund we reached out to. We liked them. They liked us. They moved super fast. And since then, they have been the most helpful investor I could imagine. So we're very happy with the partnership, and this is only day one. We plan for an infinite time horizon, so it would be a great partner.
That's so exciting! 16 million. That is amazing.
It's a good start.
Definitely, I would say so. Well, thank you so much for being on today. I think we're at time, but this was great. I loved learning about Pitt today.
Thank you, Emma.
MTS is an ex-native live streaming news and interview show covering technology, business, politics, and culture as it happens. Catch us every weekday live on X, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.